Boom.
Boom.
There we
There we
go.
go.
Big intro.
Yeah, that was epic.
That was directed by James Cameron, I think, that one.
For sure.
This takes a little bit of time for people to pop in. I've done a few of these now. They're a ton of fun. We've actually done one together. I think the best way to start this off is I'll introduce myself. I'll pass it off to Hallie, and then we'll go over to Josh to introduce ourselves, and then kick this off. So this whole segment is built around how to profitably and sustainably scale your business with any newfound ad dollars that you may have. Clearco's extremely proficient at one thing. We've deployed over $2 billion, and majority of that is spent on on paid acquisition. And so I think it's super important to bring on one of our top agency partners to discuss, like, hey, now that you have the dollars, how do you scale this business sustainably? It's a rocket ship, but it needs to continue to fly when it goes. So my name is Chris Vigman. I manage the agency channel here at Clearco. My core responsibilities is that I basically help our agency partners fund their ad spend and their inventory purchases, as well as connect our merchants with using our AI with agencies such as EmberTribe. So I'm going to pass it off now. Go ahead, Hallie.
Hey, I'm Hallie Gray from EmberTribe. I'm the director of marketing. I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks for having us, Chris. And I'm super excited to talk about scaling because I have the unique experience to be both someone who scaled client accounts personally and then also now am working as the director of marketing for EmberTribe. So super excited to help out.
Welcome.
Yeah, we couldn't have a better person on the call with us today, Chris. Howie's really seen a lot of different sides of this. I'm Josh Sturgeon. I'm a co-founder here at EmberTribe. And so, yeah, just at EmberTribe, we're really focused on the paid media side first. It's our center of genius. And then we offer other kind of suite of services to help support that. So we work primarily with direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands and SaaS companies.
Perfect. Thanks for the introduction. So the topic here today is really, again, as I said, the sustainability and scaling sustainably versus just a skyrocket type of atmosphere. And I know you guys are great in terms of tempering expectations, setting realistic goals, hitting metrics along the way, and you have a strategy built out to do that. I've seen you guys deploy it time and time again. I think something that we talk about quite frequently is like things that we really need to make sure that we're taking care of. You guys call them enemies of scale, that you really need to make sure you're getting out of the way before you even think about scaling. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys and just to go over what are a handful of things that you need to make sure are in order prior to even thinking about putting the foot on the gas pedal.
Yeah, for sure. So what we found is that when people are seeking to scale their campaigns, which everybody is, they want to maintain or improve their profitability and spend more money and therefore generate more sales. What we find is that everybody's focused on the tactics of what to do, but many times they're not paying attention to the minefield of things that will block their ability to scale in the first place. So what we've done is we've spoken with over 5,000 founders in the sales process over the last few years. And we've kind of teased out some of the things that we've seen through all those audits, all those early conversations. And it really comes down to variations of these 5. So I'll just rattle them off and then we can dive in a little bit deeper with some examples later. But the first comes down to channel mix. So what we'll most often see is somebody take their brand on one channel like Facebook, scale it as high as you possibly can, but then you have issues with privacy and tracking, or something else goes wrong, or your account gets disabled, or whatever might happen, and you're just stopped dead in your tracks. So channel mix and diversification is really important. So we'll go into that. Another one is just inventory. Like it's basics, but a lot of times people aren't able to forecast how much inventory they're going to need at different levels of scale. And so there's nothing worse than just having everything just going the way that you planned and you're scaling up at crazy velocity only to find that you're not going to be able to meet the demand that you've generated. And then that can get brands into a world of hurt. So the third would be just LTV in general. So have you been able to optimize how much value you get from a customer over the lifetime of them being a customer with you? If you haven't, it's going to put a ceiling on your ability to scale. So LTV is a huge one. AOV, average order value, just how robust is your cart size? Are you just selling like a $10 price point type of product? Have you worked on creating bundles to increase the cart size before you start scaling up? Because it's going to give you a lot of cushion once you basically are spending more in ads every day. And the last is cash flow. And so, I mean, this is really where ClearBank comes in and helps so many of our clients directly. Is, are you managing your future orders? Are you reconciling that with what you've already committed in terms of sales? Have you earmarked enough for research and development in your next product line? Well, you can't just take your entire profit and loss statement and throw it at marketing. You got to be mindful of your cash flow and what it looks like at different levels of scale. So just to review real quick, because I know that was a lot. We think about channel mix, we think about inventory, we think about LTV, we think about AOV, so average order value, and we think about cash flow. Those are the 5 things that, if not handled correctly, could just stop you dead in the water.
Right. And I think what has been fun in terms of our partnership is that you guys have an overt focus on those types of things. And a selfless plug here is our benchmarking tool actually allows you to see these things. How is my average order value versus other people in my category, in my vertical? Am I competing against the people that I'm spending ad dollars against and literally bidding against on Facebook and Google and the other channels as well? So it's been fun to basically be able to pair our benchmarking and insights tool with your ability to be able to recognize, okay, this brand is ready to go. Let's put them into phase 1 of our scaling approach.
Totally. Yeah. And one of our values at Ember Tribe is facts are your friends. And so I think a lot of times people aren't aware of their numbers because they're afraid of their numbers. But knowing if you're weak on one metric or another is really important, because then you can actually proactively solve for it. So just getting it all on the table, finding out where there's a lack of efficiency and addressing it before you start opening the floodgates is paramount success for sure.
Anxiety can be caused by inaction, and so if you're able to identify what's not where you need it, and then to be able to address that, that's pretty strong for the first steps, at least, of getting those things out of the way to allow yourself to say, okay, we're ready to put this plan into place here. Fantastic. So another thing we chat about, you guys have your systems that work extremely well at Ember Tribe, and so there's really the 3 keys to unlocking a profitable scale. Is what we chat about quite frequently. I'm not a professional in it. You guys very much so are. So I'm going to pass it over to really go through these 3 steps. And then if we could drill down into each one of them for the viewers, that'd be great.
Perfect. Yeah. So let me just intro this. I'll give you the high level, and then Hallie, I'll turn it over to you because you have the most kind of like hands-on experience recently and can speak to the specifics. But, we told you the things to avoid neglecting, but here are the things that you can focus on to actually scale your campaigns. And the first, it comes down to the planning. It comes down to understanding, where are we going to engage our customers? Have we run small amounts of tests? Can we benchmark, what's effective on these channels? And can we plan and model out what it might look like at a higher level of spend? So just planning and strategy, just table stakes for trying to chart out your growth over the coming, say, 3, 6, 9, 12 months. The next key really that we have in our kind of approach is really like, have you done a look back? Like, do you know your numbers? And I don't just mean like, do you know what your sales have been in the past? I mean, like, do you have a good sense of like what your gross profit margin is? Do you have a sense of what your repeat purchase rate is? Do you have a sense of what your lifetime value of a customer is? And it's like, until you can answer some of those questions, you don't really have the guideposts that you need in order to scale profitably. So know your numbers, do a look back. And then the third really comes down to the day-to-day tactics of scaling, how to manage budgets on these different platforms is kind of a fickle beast. So there's some nuance to that. But yeah, planning and strategy, doing a look back and knowing your numbers, and then really understanding some of the technical aspects of what it takes to scale up are 3. But Hallie, I'd love for you to dive in. Tell us a little bit more about the planning and strategy side.
Totally. So planning and strategy is pretty key, because you can't just throw a bunch of money. I mean, you can throw a bunch of money at paid traffic and just be like, I hope this works. But we never advise that, because it sets up some pretty sad stories. So really what we're looking at when we're looking at planning and strategy for your funnel and for your business as a whole is taking a look at, how does your whole system work? How does your whole growth system work? So taking a look at, all right, let's analyze if you've run ads, paid traffic already. Let's take a look at your organic traffic. Let's take a look at everything you have existing already and analyze it, and take a look at where it's converting and not converting. And then we'll take a look at your funnel. How do you take somebody who's just like a stranger on the street into a customer? Is that working? Is that converting people? And then we're going to be looking at basically like how you increase their lifetime value or their average order value with your email system and your retargeting system and your retargeting ads and following up. And so really when you're looking at planning and strategy, you're looking at what am I going to do to set myself up for the most success when I am looking at using all the elements of marketing together in one sort of holistic system to turn people who are strangers into customers, and then customers into repeat customers, and so on. So yeah, I could talk about this all day, but I won't. But I will definitely say that when it comes to it, you definitely need to think about, how is your email marketing working already? How is your organic social media working already? A lot of that content you can repurpose for paid traffic, which is always great. Take a look at your existing funnel and see where you can actually optimize for the highest return on ads existing. So retargeting is a really good way for you to be like, all right, I'm going to plan to start with retargeting because those are already hot leads, people who don't complete your purchase, people who add to cart but don't move on to checkout. There's a lot of different ways you can use ads and reduce risk of investment by going where the customers are the hottest or the audiences are the hottest. And then what I would recommend as well is looking at, like, if you're going to start with retargeting first, retargeting add to cart people, you don't just have to do Facebook and Google. You can do Snapchat. You can do Pinterest. You can do an expansion and multi-channel strategy if you have the resources available to kind of branch out and test across multiple channels first. And then you can find if there's a channel that works best for you, move forward with that one if you want. You can start with one channel and then just work on optimizing that up through our 3 phases of growth, which is traction, profit, and scale. There's a lot of different strategies and planning that you can do for it. But I would say is, like, most people are overlooking email, they're overlooking SMS, they're overlooking Messenger. There's some really awesome existing ways for you to make the most out of the traffic you're getting already, and then also to start to supercharge those by adding in additional channels and additional strategies and tactics that we can help you out with.
And how does someone sit down and think, like, so all these things that you had just said, they strategically make a lot of sense. Where do you start? Where do you begin? Is that like when you engage you guys for an audit, or like where do you even say, okay, I need to look at this from a 360-degree view versus like, it's sort of hard to know where to start.
Yeah. You want to go, Josh?
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's 2 types of clients that we'll speak to. There's ones that are spending money right now and they're hitting a ceiling. They're not able to scale beyond a certain amount. And so they're coming to us for help with that. And there's other people who are going to market, or maybe if they're already have gone to market, they just haven't started spending on paid media yet. And so handling both of those is a very different approach, but common between them is, usually, like, not getting too hung up in forecasts before you actually spend $1 on advertising. Like, the best way to figure out what your budget's going to need to be and what your numbers are going to be are to spend a small amount of money. So whether you're, starting out or you just haven't done paid media yet, you've got to take that test budget just to get the learnings, just to get the benchmarks. And then from there, you have a much more defensible position to say, okay, well, if we improve this metric by this much, we could expect this result. But a lot of people will get so hung up in the planning phase that they never spend, not realizing that actually spending the money to learn is the way that you get your answers. So I'd say that's one way, is just kind of a diagnosing and triaging where people are at in the process, if they've gone to market or not. And then another is, people will get hyper focused on the one KPI that means the most to them, which is usually return on ad spend. But what most don't realize, and we're going to talk about in the next phase, is like, you need to step back from there. Like, there are a number of metrics that precede return on ad spend that could send you the signal to say something is off. And that's what Hallie was referring to with the funnel. So it's taking a snapshot of that test budget and saying, here's where the inefficiencies are. Here's where we're doing really well. Now, how does that set us up for our workload in the coming 30 days? What are we going to focus on and prioritize?
Beautiful. Thanks. So I see a question here is, I think I'll just piece them together, is how do you use AOV? And so I think there's really 2 parts that are probably very beneficial to hear, is like, first of all, what is AOV and why does it matter? And then how can you affect AOV as well? I think there's a 2-part question there.
Yeah. Hallie, take it away.
Okay, cool. So basically AOV, average order value, all your revenue divided by the number of orders you have will give you your average order value. And the ways to increase that or improve that is by doing upsells through your funnel. It's by doing bundles. So multiple products together for a slight discount, which increases the average order value, doing special offers, things like that. Also retargeting people so that you can say like, all right, cool, you can add on as well for the last minute. Those are different ways that you can also, and you can use discounts as well to increase your average order value. Of if you're stuck at $25 for your average order value and you give people a discount once they order more than $50 worth, and it's a 10% discount, you're still increasing your average order value. So there's different ways for you to like retarget people and offer people the opportunity to upsell themselves or to buy more, that are really clever ways to get people to spend more money, but it feels like a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, just in really plain terms, if it's costing you $10 to acquire a customer that's paying you $20, there's different ways. You could try to get, your $10 mark down, or you can try to get that customer to spend more than $20, try to get them to spend $50 or $100 when they're at your store. And so Hallie mentioned like one-click upsell. If you're on Shopify, there's a whole host of apps. We have an entire blog post dedicated to the apps that you can choose. But that's one angle of doing it. If you need a better return on ad spend, you can try to optimize the heck out of the acquisition cost, or you can also just try to increase the cart size through these different tactics. And that's, again, it's just about knowing your numbers and knowing which lever you can pull to kind of adjust that. And ideally you do both and then profit from it immensely.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? That's the objective at the end of the day. So I think we went through the first step of your the 3 keys to unlocking profitability with profitable scale with the planning and strategy. Should we dive down a little bit more into like knowing your numbers? Are you ready to scale? Hallie, do you want to go with that one, or should I pass that off to Josh?
Let's have Josh handle that one. I like
Yeah, I mean, we've already alluded to it, so I'm going to be repeating some of what I've said before, but it's worth repeating in that, you need to think about 2 categories of knowing your numbers. Okay, the first are business metrics. And out of the 5,000 plus founders that we've spoken to, it's alarming how many don't have a handle on what their business metrics are. And by that, we're talking about the staples of like gross profit margin. We're talking about, timelines from orders from their suppliers, like understanding the scope of how long it could take to refresh their inventory. It's just the table stakes stuff of, do you know the numbers behind your business and what allows you to stay profitable? So there's that piece of it. But then the other kind of class of knowing your numbers are more of the sales and marketing classic funnel metrics that we've been alluding to. So for e-commerce, we're primarily talking about anything from view content event, which would be somebody visiting a product page, to then add to cart, right? So that they indicated some purchase intent there, initiate checkout, and then of course, purchasing the actual product. And so anywhere, like you need to first have a snapshot of how that's performing now from all sources, meaning organic traffic, Facebook, your email channel, stack them up in a spreadsheet and see them side by side, and then look at it as a blended average as well. And that gives you like your benchmark, and it should immediately tell you some things about your business, where you might be bleeding money, where there might be inefficiencies. And again, like this is something that we do in our sales process for free, like as we audit, and it's that value that we're trying to bring to the conversation and honestly warn people if they're not ready to scale and if their business is not in a healthy position to take on capital and actually grow it.
Right.
So yeah, I would say it comes down to those 2 classes of knowing your numbers and then making sure that you have measurement set up so that you can see how it changes. Again, like this is a more increasingly complex conversation as like the privacy stuff rolls out from Apple and the cookies are starting to be challenged. But at the end of the day, you just have to have something you can be consistent with and come back to, whether that's Google Analytics, like a standard setup, or using like a Wicked Reports or a Segmetrics, whatever you're going to choose to use, just be consistent and make sure that's going to update with whatever other channels you're advertising on.
I think something that sets you guys apart from some of my agency partners is you're essentially joining their business as a consultant with your clients. A lot of agencies are, here's the creative and we have an in-house studio and this is how we're going to lower your costs of goods sold and this kind of stuff, where you guys are looking at this more from not only front-end metrics on digital acquisition, but on the business side of things too. How can we improve the metrics with the day-to-day function of your business outside of just paid acquisition? So I definitely credit to you guys for always doing that with the referrals that we send you guys, and I'm sure just your overall book of business.
Yeah, and just to send it back to you guys too, not to have this love fest, but you know, we've tried to build an ecosystem for our clients so that if there's something outside of the scope of what we can deliver, be it strategic consulting for operations or whether it be sources of capital, like we want to be able to make those introductions. And so having you in our corner to be able to say, listen, like these guys have a great product. It's just cash flow isn't where it needs to be. Like they need funding for whether an inventory order or for scaling their spend. And just to be able to have that cushion in such a flexible way is an incredible asset.
Beautiful. I actually see, I see a great, not picture, great question here. It's all to do with benchmarks and fall off. This one specifically is from viewed content to add to cart. This is out of my specialization. Hallie, would you be able to answer this question in terms of like what a good benchmark would be for viewed content all the way to add to cart?
Yeah, totally. So what we're looking for there is usually like a 10 to 20% conversion rate from view content to add to cart. It depends on the price. So if it's more expensive, you'd probably be looking at a lower percentage. If it's less expensive, it'd probably be the higher percentage. And then just to track that funnel down, we kind of see as a benchmark, like add to cart to initiate checkout is usually about 50% conversion rate. And then initiate checkout to purchase is usually about a 50% conversion rate. So when I was working on clients' accounts, I would look at the overall conversion rates to see if there was a lower performance in the funnel than what we would normally expect. Some funnels are different. Like they might have a higher view content to add to cart ratio than this. That's okay. But usually what I'd see is about a 25% add to cart to purchase conversion rate. So that's where I would start looking at it and just being like, oh, is this, doing fairly well across the funnel, or is there like a place where you're really dropping off quite dramatically? But those are the numbers I would use.
Is that vertical agnostic?
That's for e-commerce, and yeah, pretty vertical agnostic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the benchmark I would use for any client. But yeah, and I could tell Josh has some ideas on this as well. So,
well, yeah, I get excited about this because we've been building a tool that's about to be released in the next week or so that just visualizes a lot of this right away. But I would just say, as you're thinking about measuring your funnel and finding areas to improve, think about just having those like table stakes analytics in place where you can see, are you above or below the benchmarks? But then take the time to gather the qualitative data too, which is using a tool like Hotjar and to record these video sessions, because you might get alerted that one of these metrics is off, like the initiate checkout to purchase is off. And that's a great starting point to hone in and be like, is there anything on the page that's kind of weird? But I mean, Hotjar or a tool like it will allow you to see how a user is either struggling to find a button, or sometimes there's like a weird mobile version of your site that just doesn't allow you to proceed. And the only way to catch that is to pour yourself a cocktail or a drink and just watch like 100 sessions. And they're just like 10, 15-second spurts of people going through your checkout funnel. But it's amazing the light bulb moments that you can get by just pausing and looking at people actually use your site. There's been a number of campaigns that we've saved by doing it that way.
Beautiful. That's awesome. And so should we dig more into really the third piece here of like the day-to-day scaling of your accounts and management of your accounts? Like, what are you looking for? It's great to say like, oh, I want to hit a ROAS in 3 months and I need to focus to make sure I'm hitting those. Is there like, should you be digging into your account every day? How frequent is that? And like, what are things that you can be observing and analyzing on a daily basis to help get to that end goal of being profitable, but scaling at the same time?
Yeah, I've got some ideas about this, because what happens is that, I mean, we spend all day, every day working on our clients' growth marketing. So like, obviously to us, we think it's an important activity that founders or entrepreneurs should be focusing on. But what happens is like when you are actually working on the day-to-day of scaling is like, you should be checking your accounts daily to see like where they're at and where they are in terms of benchmarks. So like, what's your click-through rate? What's your cost per click? What's your, what's your CPM? So looking at the granular data and just checking in on it. Usually you would be checking in on it to see if there's anything just wrong and making sure everything's running smoothly. And then you would want to do like a look back of the past 7 days, because that would give you enough data to not make the wrong decision too quickly. make sure things are delivering correctly, make sure like everything's working well, clearing up comments. And then things that you would be looking at in terms of scaling your accounts would be like, okay, what audiences are working, like running audience tests, running creative tests. There's a lot of testing that goes on when you're scaling, where you can't just like use the same ad for, 2 years and expect to be able to do what some of our clients have done, which is like go from 20K months to 200K months, because it requires so much testing and hands-on work. The other thing I would say is that when it comes to paid scaling, when you're adding in cold traffic and warm traffic and you're paying for that traffic, is that you should be looking at like, is your email performing the way that to make the most out of this traffic you pay for? Is your organic social media supporting your paid traffic results? Because when you're active on organic social media, that helps your paid traffic results. Looking at how you have like your refund rate and how is that being impacted by all your cold traffic that you're getting into your business now. So the scaling of your accounts is a very holistic sort of project where you really want to be looking at your growth system as a whole and being like, how is this handling putting your foot on the accelerator and going faster? Because you might have to actually slow down and come back for a bit, or slow down for a bit to like catch up with inventory or like internal administration and processes. So like you can increase the spend quite easily, but if you don't have that inventory or if you don't have that infrastructure in place, part of your scaling might be getting a new warehouse or hiring virtual or assistants to help you package stuff up, stuff like that. So scaling can take on a lot, but in terms of marketing, it's going to be looking at your organic, your paid, your email marketing, your SMS marketing, and making sure all of those are like being tested to optimize for. And that's why I would usually recommend having been a founder and then also having run other people's growth systems, like delegating this stuff to people who spend all day, every day on it really allows you to become more of a CEO and an owner instead of getting bogged down in the awesomeness that marketing is, but it's also time consuming.
Totally. I see another question that came in here. So I think the best way to frame this question is it's about retargeting on Facebook specifically. Being a founder with my own business, I know that very few conversions happen at the first view of your content and the first time that you engage with your brand. Almost 99% of my purchases were always retargeting. The question here is like, how do you retarget successfully? Is that based off of viewed content, or is that based off of added cart? Like, what metric is triggering who you should be retargeting to?
Yeah. So Hallie, I know you've used a number of different retargeting stacks for your client work in the past, but I'll say this, like one thing that a lot of people miss about retargeting is proper hygiene with exclusions. So one thing that you want to be diligent about is making sure that you're excluding your warm traffic, so people who would be retargeted, from your prospecting campaigns. So you want to exclude, anybody maybe who's visited your site in the last, call it 90 days or 180 days, whatever the pixel length will give you. And it's important because you want to be able to have a nice concrete look at how effective is my prospecting versus retargeting, and how do things change as we maybe engage in other channels. And, in terms of like which retargeting campaigns to run, I'll turn over to Hallie because I know she's had a few different ones that she's used. But just all scaling, I want people to take this away, as like all scaling ultimately comes down to opening up a wider top of funnel through a number of different sources and making sure that your retargeting stack is dialed in and able to take advantage of that wider funnel of people coming through. So yeah, Hallie, if you want to share with people maybe some of the retargeting stacks that you've used, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I definitely recommend 7 days, 14 days, 21 days. It depends on how big your audiences are. So if you're relatively new to traffic, paid traffic, I'd say the bigger the bottom of funnel recapture, the better. And then what I also recommend that a lot of people that I found really successful is using DPAs, which is dynamic product ads, which is basically they'll pull in the product that you want to show based on the likelihood of the person taking the action. Usually I would just do purchase as a conversion event for bottom of funnel, because that's what you're aiming for. If they can't get the purchase, Facebook won't usually spend your budget. So that's usually where I would start. Some people, or sometimes you'd have to go back further in the funnel and do like initiate checkout to like help the funnel start moving along and gaining that momentum and seasoning your pixel. But generally purchase worked out pretty well for bottom of funnel as a conversion event.
Nothing like a seasoned pixel.
So delicious.
Fresh off the grill. Yeah.
So listen, this was fun. We get to do this on the daily, so we're super lucky to talk about this. We, at the end of the day, there's a system to scale, and there's requirements you need to scale profitably. You need financing for inventory. You need financing for marketing spend, but more importantly, you need a system to be able to pour those funds into. That's proven. So I'm going to pass it over to Hallie to have one last word and really send us off on our way, as you guys were our featured partner on this Partner Pulse. Thanks so much for joining, but I'll turn it over to you for one last moment.
So I really recommend, having worked on people's accounts and then also having been a founder, that definitely getting somebody else's eyes on your business and like the back end of the metrics is really helpful. So we have free audits that you can go ahead and sign up for. I think Tori's put the link into the comments. Definitely recommend. But when it comes for the general scaling of your business, I mean, Josh has made some excellent points. It usually just comes down to like knowing your numbers, getting real logical about it, and then just seeing if it's the right time for you to scale, because it does require an investment. Josh, what do you have to say about it though?
I mean, you said it best, but I would just say, listen, like if we had to summarize everything into a couple sentences, it's this, is that, you know, your profitability, your ROAS, your return on ad spend is going to go down as you scale. Like that's a foregone conclusion. It might go up in the near term for a little bit, but once you hit a critical mass, it just becomes a math equation. It's going to go down. So the question is, do you have the back end figured out so that you can sustain that? Do you have your cash flow figured out so you can sustain that? And have you created enough cushion to be able to sustain that? If you can answer yes to those, you're ready to scale. And then there's a bunch of tactical, practical things that you can put into practice, but just make sure you have that figured out.
Beautiful. Thank you both so much for your time this afternoon. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for having us.
Take care. Bye.